I watched my ex-husband's face crumble as the federal agents slapped handcuffs on his wrists. 6 months ago, this same man threw $200 at my pregnant belly and told me to handle it. Like our baby was garbage that needed to be thrown away. Now he was facing 4 years in federal prison. And here's the part that makes me smile every single time. He still does not know the truth about whose baby I was actually carrying. Not his.
Claire Mitchell, age
Never
32,
was.
is
The
wanted for
biological
questioning in
father, a
connection
man
with the downtown
worth
explosion.
$4.2 billion. A tech
Good morning,
billionaire
gentlemen.
whose name makes the entire Preston family
trust I'm not
look like
interrupting
they are
anything
living
important.
paycheck to paycheck. But here is what makes this story different. I did not need his money to destroy them. I did it myself. A pregnant accountant with $47 and a photographic memory brought down one of Boston's most powerful families. Want to know how? If you believe karma is real, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. Drop a comment if you have ever been underestimated by someone who thought they were better than you. This story is for you, and trust me, what the Prestons did to me at that Christmas party and what I did to them 6 months later, you are not going to want to miss a single word. Let me take you back to where it all began. Christmas Eve, snow falling in thick, perfect flakes over Boston. The kind of postcard-perfect winter evening that makes you believe in miracles and magic and happily ever afters. I believed in all of those things that night. I was such a fool. My name is Claire Mitchell, and this is the story of how a pregnant accountant with $47 to her name brought down one of Boston's most powerful families. Not with money, not with connections, not with a secret inheritance or a fairy godmother or any of the things you might expect. I did it with numbers, with patience, with a photographic memory that my enemies grossly underestimated, and with the kind of stubborn determination that only comes from having absolutely nothing left to lose. If you have ever been underestimated, if you have ever been dismissed and discarded and thrown away like garbage, then you need to hear this story. Because what happened to me could happen to anyone. And what I did about it, well, that is something special. Subscribe now if you believe in karma. Turn on notifications because trust me, you do not want to miss a single moment of what comes next. And drop a comment below if you have ever been treated like you were worthless by someone who thought they were better than you. This story is for you. Now let me take you back to that Christmas Eve morning before everything fell apart. I woke up in the Preston family mansion at 6:30 in the morning, just like I did every day. Not because I wanted to, but because Victoria Preston believed that sleeping past 7 was a sign of moral weakness. And in 7 years of marriage to her son, I had learned that it was easier to comply than to fight. The bedroom was cold. Ryan had already left for his morning workout at the private gym downstairs. He never said goodbye when he left. He had stopped doing that sometime around year 3. I touched my stomach, feeling the slight swell that was just starting to show. 11 weeks pregnant, a tiny heartbeat that had appeared on the ultrasound screen 2 weeks ago, flickering like a star. I had not told anyone yet, not Ryan, not Victoria, not anyone in the Preston family who had spent 7 years making me feel like an unwelcome guest in my own home. Tonight was going to be different. Tonight, at the annual Christmas gala, I was going to announce my pregnancy in front of everyone. I had rehearsed the moment 100 times in my head. The surprised smile on Ryan's face, the grudging acceptance from Victoria, the congratulations from all those society people who had always looked through me like I was invisible. Finally, after 7 years, I would belong. That was the dream anyway. The pathetic, desperate dream of a woman who had spent her entire life wanting a family. Let me tell you about myself. The real story, not the sanitized version Victoria told her charity board friends. I grew up in the Massachusetts foster care system. Not one home, not 2 homes, 17 different placements in 18 years. Some were okay, most were not. A few were the kind of bad that still gives me nightmares. I learned early that the only person I could count on was myself. I learned that useful children got to stay longer than difficult children. I learned to make myself small and quiet and helpful, to anticipate what people wanted before they asked, to become whatever I needed to be to survive another day. When I aged out of the system at 18, I had nothing. No family, no money, no support network, just a garbage bag full of secondhand clothes and a burning determination to build a better life. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through community college. Waitressing at a diner from 6 to 2, cleaning offices from 3 to 8, tutoring high school students in math from 9 to 11. I slept 4 hours a night and studied on my breaks and never, ever complained. When I graduated with my associate degree, I enrolled in night school at a state university. Another 4 years of grinding, another 4 years of sacrifice. I earned my bachelor's degree in accounting at 26, and a month later, I passed the CPA exam on my first try. I was working at a diner in Back Bay when Ryan Preston walked into my life. He was everything I was not. Wealthy, connected, confident, the kind of handsome that made you forget how to speak. He ordered coffee and eggs and left $100 tip, and when he came back the next day, he asked for my number. I should have known better. Men like Ryan Preston do not fall in love with waitresses. They collect them, they use them, they discard them when something shinier comes along. But I was 27 years old and desperately lonely. I had spent my entire life on the outside looking in, pressing my face against the glass of other people's happiness. Here was someone offering me a chance to finally step inside. Ryan proposed after 6 months. I said yes without hesitation. When his mother presented me with a prenuptial agreement the night before our wedding, I signed it without reading. What did I have to protect? I owned nothing. 7 years later, I still owned nothing. The prenup made sure of that. But on that Christmas Eve morning, I thought I had something better than money. I thought I had a family. I thought I had a home. I was wrong about everything. The Preston Mansion was a monument to old money and older grudges. A Georgian colonial built in 1892, it sat on 3 acres of manicured grounds in the most exclusive neighborhood in Boston. 8 bedrooms, 12 bathrooms, a ballroom that could hold 300 people. I had lived there for 7 years, and it had never felt like home. Victoria Preston ran the household with the iron efficiency of a military general. Every meal was planned weeks in advance. Every servant knew exactly what was expected of them. Every guest who walked through those doors was evaluated, categorized, and either cultivated or discarded based on their usefulness to the family. I fell into the discarded category almost immediately. It was never anything overt. Victoria was far too sophisticated for that. She did not scream or throw things or make scenes. She simply made her disapproval known through 1,000 tiny cuts. The way she would compliment my dress and then mention that her housekeeper had one just like it. The way she would ask about my family at dinner parties, knowing I had none, and then sigh sympathetically while everyone stared at me with pity. The way she would volunteer me to help the catering staff at events as if I were hired help rather than her daughter-in-law. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. That was Victoria's specialty. Richard Preston was different. He did not bother with subtlety because he did not bother with me at all. In 7 years, I could count on one hand the number of times he had spoken directly to me. I was not worth his attention. I was not an asset. I was not even a liability worth managing. I was simply nothing. And then there was Megan, Ryan's younger sister, 28 years old with 500,000 Instagram followers and a cruelty that took my breath away. She called me the charity case, the stray Ryan brought home, the social climber who got lucky. She said these things behind my back, loudly enough for me to hear through walls. Or maybe she said them quietly, and I just had very good hearing. Either way, the message was clear. I did not belong. I would never belong. And no matter how hard I tried, no matter how many dinner parties I attended, or charity events I organized, or Preston family traditions I memorized, I would always be the outsider. That Christmas Eve morning, I spent 3 hours helping the catering staff set up for the gala. Victoria had not asked me to help. She never asked. She simply made it clear, through pointed looks and disappointed sighs, that my assistance was expected. I did not mind. I liked being useful. After years in foster care, I had learned that useful people got to stay. At 3 in the afternoon, I finally escaped to my room to get ready. I had been saving for months for the perfect dress, an emerald green gown that brought out the color of my eyes. Modest, elegant, not trying to compete with Victoria's inevitable designer original. I stood in front of the mirror and practiced my announcement. Ryan and I have some wonderful news to share. I touched my stomach and smiled. We are expecting a baby, our first child, Due in July. I imagine the room falling silent. I imagine Victoria's perfectly composed face showing genuine emotion for the first time. I imagine Ryan putting his arm around me and pulling me close. I imagined finally being seen. What I did not imagine, what I could not possibly have imagined, was what was happening downstairs at that exact moment. Catherine, my attorney, obtained the details during discovery. Security footage, email records, text messages, everything the Prestons thought they had hidden. They were gathered in Richard's study. Victoria, Richard, Ryan, Megan. 4 people I had tried so desperately to please for 7 years, sitting in leather chairs worth more than my entire wardrobe, calmly discussing how to destroy me. Victoria spoke first. She always spoke first. It has to be tonight. Public. Clean. No room for her to make a scene. Ryan nodded. He was wearing golf clothes. He had spent the morning on the indoor simulator while I helped arrange flowers. Are the papers ready? Richard slid a manila envelope across his mahogany desk. Ironclad. The prenup gives her nothing. $5,000 settlement. She waives all claims. Megan was in the corner, filming on her phone. She was always filming on her phone. I'm going to get so many views on this, she giggled. My followers love drama. Victoria ignored her daughter. Sloan will be there. After tonight, you are free to announce your engagement. Sloan Whitmore, I need to tell you about her. She was my college roommate. We met freshman year and bonded over our shared poverty. Late-night study sessions fueled by ramen noodles and cheap wine. Dreams about the future whispered in the dark. When she graduated with a marketing degree and struggled to find work, I helped her. I let her crash on my couch. I lent her money I could not afford to lose. I believed in her when no one else did. 2 years ago, when Preston Financial had an opening for VP of Marketing, I recommended her personally. I vouched for her character. I put my own reputation on the line. And the whole time, for 3 years, she had been sleeping with my husband. I did not know that on Christmas Eve. I did not know that Ryan had been paying for her apartment, her car, her credit cards. I did not know that they had been planning their wedding before my divorce papers were even signed. I did not know a lot of things. But I was about to learn. The Preston mansion looked like something out of a holiday movie that night. A 20-foot Christmas tree dominated the main entrance hall, every branch dripping with gold ornaments and white lights. Ice sculptures shaped like angels flanked the main staircase, slowly weeping as the warmth of 200 bodies filled the rooms. A string quartet played classical arrangements of Christmas carols in the corner of the ballroom. Waiters in black tie weaved through the crowd carrying silver trays of champagne and artisanal hors d'oeuvres. 150 guests filled the rooms, Boston's elite, business partners with portfolios worth more than small countries, old money families who had known the Prestons for generations, and new money families desperate to climb into their orbit, press photographers documenting everything for the society pages. This was Victoria's masterpiece. Her annual Christmas gala was the most exclusive invitation in Boston, and she orchestrated every detail with the precision of a military campaign. The guest list was curated months in advance. The menu was finalized by October. The decorations were installed by a team of 12 working through the night. I had helped with all of it every year for 7 years. And every year I had been made to understand that I was staff, not a guest. Tonight felt different somehow. I told myself it was because of the pregnancy, because everything was about to change. I descended the main staircase in my emerald dress, feeling beautiful for the first time in months, maybe years. The fabric swirled around my ankles. The subtle sparkle caught the light. I had spent hours on my hair and makeup, trying to look like I belonged among these people who had never accepted me. I scanned the crowd for Ryan, my husband, the father of my child. I found him near the Christmas tree, laughing at something someone had said. He looked perfect as always. Dark suit tailored to his frame. Hairstyle just so, the kind of effortless elegance that came from a lifetime of never having to try. And next to him, standing too close, her hand resting on his arm, was Sloan Whitmore. She was wearing white. My stomach dropped. White. At a Christmas party, like a bride, like someone making a statement. I started walking toward them, pushing through the crowd, my mind racing with explanations. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe she just liked white. Maybe I was being paranoid. Victoria intercepted me before I could reach them. She materialized out of nowhere, blocking my path with that perfect society smile she always wore when she was about to hurt me. Claire, darling, she looked me up and down. You look adequate. Green is such a safe choice. Ryan has a surprise for you tonight. Something special. Her tone made my skin crawl, but I smiled back because that was what I always did. Thank you, Victoria. I have something special to share too. Her smile flickered for just a moment. Something shifted behind her eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by that mask of pleasant indifference. Come with me, she said, taking my elbow in a grip that was just slightly too firm. Ryan is about to make an announcement. She guided me through the crowd toward the center of the ballroom. People parted for her like water. That was Victoria's superpower. She walked through the world expecting everyone to make way, and they did. The string quartet stopped playing. Conversations faded into murmurs, then silence. Richard Preston climbed 2 steps of the main staircase and tapped his champagne glass. Thank you all for joining us on this special night. His voice carried across the room, commanding attention the way it always did. Before we continue the festivities, my son has an announcement. Ryan climbed the steps to join his father. He looked out over the crowd, his expression pleasant and composed. He did not look at me. Thank you, everyone, Ryan said. 7 years ago, I made a decision I thought was right at the time. I married a woman I believed could grow into this family. My hands started trembling. My heart started pounding. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. I was wrong, Ryan continued. His voice was calm, almost bored, like he was reading a quarterly earnings report. Claire came from nothing. She has no family, no connections, no understanding of our world. I carried her as long as I could, but some people simply cannot rise to the occasion. I could not breathe. The room was spinning. This could not be happening. He pulled out a manila envelope. These are divorce papers. I have had them prepared to ensure a clean, amicable separation. He finally looked at me, and his eyes were empty. Claire, I think we both know this is for the best. 150 people staring at me. Some looked uncomfortable. A few looked sympathetic. Most looked entertained, like they were watching a particularly scandalous scene in a movie. Megan was in the corner holding up her phone, filming everything. She was grinning. I opened my mouth. No sound came out. I tried again. Ryan. My voice was barely a whisper. I am pregnant. Nothing. No reaction from anyone. I said it louder, desperation cracking my voice. I am pregnant with your baby. I was going to tell you tonight. I was going to announce it. We are having a baby. For just a moment, something flickered across Ryan's face. Fear, or maybe guilt. His composure cracked for half a second, but then Victoria stepped forward, and that crack sealed shut. How convenient. Victoria's smile was sad and sympathetic, playing perfectly for the crowd. A last-minute pregnancy announcement. This is exactly the kind of manipulation we have been dealing with. She turned to the assembled guests, spreading her hands in a gesture of helpless sorrow. We tried so hard with her. We really did. We welcomed her into our family despite her background. We gave her every opportunity. But some people, well, some people just cannot be helped. I was frozen, paralyzed. My brain could not process what was happening. Ryan stepped down from the staircase and walked toward me. The crowd parted for him. He stopped close enough that I could smell his cologne, the one I had bought him for Christmas last year. Sign the papers, he said, his voice low enough that only I could hear. Take the money and handle that. He glanced at my stomach. I will deny it is mine. You have no proof. But I did have proof. It was his baby. I knew it was. We had been trying for 2 years. I had tracked my ovulation. I had taken the tests, except it was not his baby. And I did not know that yet. Victoria appeared at Ryan's shoulder. Security will help you gather your things. We have already had your belongings packed. She was still smiling for the photographers. Such a shame it had to end this way. My voice cracked. I have rights. I am his wife. You cannot just throw me out like garbage. You signed a prenup, dear. Victoria's smile never wavered. You have no rights here. You never did. Someone pressed a pen into my trembling hand. The divorce papers were already open to the signature page. I looked around the room. At all those faces watching me like I was entertainment. At Megan filming my humiliation for her followers. At Sloane standing by the Christmas tree in her white dress, watching with something that might have been pity or triumph. At Ryan, who had already turned away. Like I was no longer worth looking at. I signed. What else could I do? I was alone, surrounded, outnumbered. My survival instinct, honed by 18 years in foster care, screamed at me to get out. Survive now. Think later. So I signed my name on the dotted line, surrendering 7 years of marriage for $5,000 I would never see. Two security guards appeared at my elbows. They were polite but firm. They walked me through the crowd, past all those staring faces, through the service corridor behind the kitchen where the real work of the party happened out of sight. One of the cooks looked up as we passed. She had kind eyes. She had slipped me extra food sometimes when Victoria was not looking. "I am sorry," she mouthed. I could not respond. We went out through the service entrance, into the alley where the delivery trucks parked. It was snowing, fat white flakes falling from a black sky. Cold air hit my face like a slap. One of the guards handed me a small suitcase. "Your belongings, ma'am. My entire life, 7 years in this house, everything I own, packed into carry-on luggage." The other guard pressed something into my hand, an envelope. There was a car service waiting at the end of the drive. Paid for. One trip anywhere in the city. Then they went back inside and closed the door. I stood in the alley in my emerald dress, snow collecting on my shoulders, staring at the closed door. I could hear the party continuing inside. Music starting up again. Laughter. Champagne glasses clinking. My phone buzzed. Venmo notification from Ryan Preston. $200. Memo line, "For your situation." For your situation. Like my pregnancy was a problem to be solved, a stain to be removed, an inconvenience to be handled. I sat down on my suitcase in the snow. The cold seeped through my dress. The fabric was ruined. The dress I had saved for months to afford, ruined in 15 minutes. And I broke. I do not know how long I cried, long enough for the snow to pile up around me, long enough for my tears to freeze on my cheeks, long enough for the car service to give up and leave. Finally, I forced myself to move. My legs were numb, my fingers were blue. Hypothermia was a real possibility if I stayed out here much longer. I checked my bank account on my phone. $47. Ryan's Venmo was pending, but it was linked to our joint account. I could not access it. $47. No home, no job, though I did not know that yet. Pregnant. Alone. I started walking. There was a diner I had seen once driving past. Open 24 hours. 3 miles away. I could make it. I had walked further than that plenty of times, back when I could not afford bus fare. I dragged my suitcase through the snow in my ruined heels. My dress was soaked through within 5 minutes. My teeth chattered so hard I thought they might crack. But I kept walking, one foot in front of the other, the same way I had survived everything else in my life, one step at a time. The neon sign of the diner appeared through the snow like a beacon. Open 24 hours, a warm glow spilling out through frost-covered windows. I pushed open the door and stumbled inside. The warmth hit me like a physical force. I stood in the doorway, dripping melted snow onto the linoleum floor, shaking so hard I could barely stand. The waitress behind the counter took one look at me and grabbed a pot of coffee. "Sit down, honey." She was in her early 60s, with gray hair and the kind of face that had seen everything and was surprised by nothing. "You look like you need this." Her name was Doris, and she saved my life that night. Not literally, I probably would not have died from hypothermia. Probably. But she saved the part of me that still believed in human kindness. The part that believed in strangers helping strangers. The part that believed I was worth saving. She brought me coffee and pie and a blanket from the back room. She did not ask questions. She just let me sit there and cry, refilling my cup every time it got low. At some point, the tears stopped. My accountant brain, the part of me that had gotten me through night school while working 3 jobs, started to work again. I pulled out the divorce papers, forced myself to read them properly instead of signing in blind panic. Page 1, standard dissolution language. Page 2, division of assets. Page 3, asset disclosure. I stopped. Ryan's total assets, $2.3 million. I had prepared the Preston family taxes last year. A favor, Victoria demanded. I remembered every number. That was my gift, my curse. I saw numbers once, and they stayed in my head forever. Ryan's trust fund alone was worth $15 million. His stock options were worth another $8 million. His real estate holdings, hidden under shell company names, were worth at least $4 million more, $2.3 million. He had disclosed less than 10% of his actual wealth. That was fraud, and fraud voids a prenup. I looked up from the papers. Doris was watching me with those kind eyes. Honey, she said softly, I do not know what happened to you tonight, but I have been working this counter for 30 years, and I know that look. Someone broke you. They took everything, I whispered. I have nothing. She shook her head. You are sitting upright. You are breathing. You are thinking. That is not nothing. She slid another piece of pie across the counter. On the house. Whatever they did, do not let them win by giving up. I looked at the pie. Apple. Still warm. Such a simple kindness. And then I looked at the divorce papers, at the fraudulent asset disclosure, at the weapon I had just discovered. They think they destroyed me, I said slowly, but they made a mistake. Doris smiled. The good ones always do. Christmas morning dawned gray and cold. I had spent the entire night in the diner, drinking coffee and making plans. Doris let me stay, even when her shift ended at 6. She slipped me a $20 bill on her way out. For the bus, she said. And honey, whatever you are planning, make it count. I was not entirely sure what I was planning yet, but I knew it started with information, evidence, documentation. I needed to get to my apartment and retrieve my files. My laptop, the backup hard drive where I kept copies of everything important. The bus dropped me off 2 blocks from my building at 8 in the morning. The streets were empty. Christmas Day. Normal people were home with their families, opening presents, eating breakfast together. I did not have a family anymore. I was not sure I had ever really had one. I saw the notice on my door before I even reached the landing. Lease terminated per primary leaseholder Ryan Preston. Belongings in storage unit 47, 30 days to retrieve. The locks had been changed. I tried my key anyway, some desperate part of me hoping it was a mistake. It did not work. I stood there for a long moment, staring at that notice. Ryan's name had been on the lease. Of course it had. When we got married, he insisted on handling all the paperwork. I thought he was being thoughtful, taking care of me. I did not realize he was building a cage. The apartment I had lived in for 7 years. My books, my clothes, the quilt my college roommate made me before Sloan, a girl named Jennifer who died of cancer our junior year. All of it locked away, accessible only on their terms, okay? I took a deep breath. Okay, I went to the bank next. There was a branch 6 blocks away. I needed to withdraw whatever cash I had before they figured out a way to take that too. I am sorry, ma'am. The teller was young, probably fresh out of college, looking at me with a mixture of pity and discomfort. This account has been frozen due to a report of suspicious activity. Frozen? I stared at her through the plexiglass. What does that mean? The primary account holder reported potentially fraudulent transactions. Until our fraud department completes their investigation, all withdrawals and transfers have been suspended. The primary account holder, Ryan. His name was on the account because he had set it up, back when we were first married. I deposited my paychecks into it every 2 weeks. It was supposed to be our joint account, our shared finances, his name, his control. I have $47, I said, my voice cracking. $47, and I am pregnant, and I have nowhere to go. The teller's face crumpled with sympathy, but she shook her head. I am sorry, there is nothing I can do. You can file an appeal with the fraud department, but it takes 6 to 8 weeks to process, 6 to 8 weeks. I would be living on the street in 6 to 8 weeks. I left the bank in a daze. The snow had stopped overnight, but the sidewalks were still covered. My ruined heels slipped and slid with every step. There was one more place I could try. Preston Financial. It was Christmas Day, but the security desk was always staffed. Maybe I could get someone to let me into my office, grab my personal files, my laptop. I had worked there for 5 years. Surely someone would help me. The security guard met me at the door before I could even enter the lobby. Ms. Mitchell. He was a big man, built like a linebacker, but his eyes were apologetic. You have been terminated. HR will mail your final check. Terminated? The word felt like a physical blow. For what? A woman appeared behind the guard. Navy blue suit, expensive shoes. I recognized her from the HR department. Linda something or Lisa. I could never remember. Falsifying expense reports, she said crisply, holding up a manila folder. We have documentation. You are lucky we are not pressing charges. I did not falsify anything. We have documentation, she repeated. Your signature on falsified expense reports totaling over $50,000. Your passwords used to access accounts you were not authorized to view. She tilted her head, studying me like I was a specimen under a microscope. Mr. Preston wanted to be lenient, given the circumstances, but the board insisted on termination. Given the circumstances, like being thrown out of my marriage at a Christmas party in front of 200 people was a circumstance. Like being homeless and pregnant and framed for crimes I did not commit was a circumstance. They had planted evidence. They had used my passwords, which Ryan knew because I trusted him. They had forged my signature on documents. This was not impulsive. This was not a spur-of-the-moment decision to divorce an inconvenient wife. This was planned, coordinated, months, maybe years in the making. They did not just want a divorce. They wanted me destroyed. I stood on the sidewalk outside of Preston Financial, watching my breath fog in the cold air. My phone said it was 9:30 in the morning. Christmas Day. The streets were empty. I was homeless, penniless, unemployed, pregnant, accused of fraud, and completely, utterly alone. Let me pause here and ask you something. Have you ever felt truly alone? Not just lonely, but fundamentally, terrifyingly alone in the world? When you grow up in the system like I did, you learn that alone is your natural state. Other people have families, support networks, safety nets. You have yourself and nothing else. I thought I had escaped that. I thought marriage meant never being alone again. I thought Ryan and the Prestons, for all their coldness, were still better than nothing. I was wrong. Being alone among people who despise you is worse than being alone by yourself. At least when you are by yourself, no one is actively trying to hurt you. I had one person left who might help me. One connection from my old life that the Prestons did not know about. Marcus Webb. He had been my professor in night school 15 years ago, a forensic accountant who specialized in uncovering hidden assets and financial fraud. More importantly, he had believed in me when no one else did. You have a gift, Claire, he told me once, after I had aced a particularly difficult exam. Numbers speak to you. You see patterns that other people miss. Do not ever let anyone convince you that gift is worthless. I had not spoken to Marcus in years. I did not even know if he was still alive. But I remembered him mentioning that he volunteered at a veterans center in Somerville. It was my only lead. I spent 8 of my remaining $47 at the public library, paying for an hour of computer access. Marcus Webb had retired 5 years ago. No social media presence, no current address listed. But I found an old interview in an accounting trade journal from 3 years back. He mentioned the Veterans Center by name. I took 3 different buses to get there. It cost me another $7. That left me with $32 to my name. The Veterans Center was a squat brick building in a working-class neighborhood. I waited in the parking lot across the street, sitting on a bench that had seen better days, watching people come and go. For 6 hours I waited. My dress was still damp from the night before. I was shivering constantly. But I had nowhere else to be. At 4 in the afternoon I saw him. He was older than I remembered. Gray hair instead of black. Walking with a slight limp he had not had before. But it was definitely Marcus Webb, carrying grocery bags toward a modest duplex across the street from the center. Mr. Webb? He turned, squinted at me, then his face broke into recognition. Claire Mitchell? He set down his grocery bags and stared at me. My God, you look terrible. What happened? And standing there on the sidewalk, in my ruined emerald dress and my broken heels and my frozen tears, I told him everything. It took over an hour. Marcus brought me inside his house, which was small but warm and cluttered with books. He made me soup, the first hot meal I had eaten since the pie at the diner. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. So let me understand, he said finally. They fraudulently concealed assets in the divorce filing. They forged your signature on termination documents. They froze your bank accounts. And they destroyed your professional reputation, all in the span of 72 hours. Yes. Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying me with those sharp eyes that had not dimmed with age. That is not amateur work. That is a coordinated takedown. They must have been planning this for months. I know. I leaned forward, feeling the first spark of something other than despair. I also know they made mistakes. Ryan listed his assets at 2.3 million. I know for a fact his trust fund alone is worth 15 million. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You have documentation? I have something better. I tapped my temple. I prepared their taxes. I remember every number, every account, every shell company they tried to hide. But I need someone who knows how to trace hidden assets to help me find the paper trail. Why should I help you? Marcus asked. I am retired. I have a quiet life. I do not need enemies like the Prestons. I met his eyes. Because you taught me that numbers do not lie. People lie, systems lie, but numbers, if you follow them far enough, always tell the truth. I paused. Help me follow the numbers, Marcus. Help me find the truth. And help me make them pay. He was silent for what felt like an eternity. I could see him thinking, weighing the risks and the rewards. Then he smiled. The same smile I remembered from night school when I had solved a problem that stumped everyone else. You know, he said, I was starting to get bored with retirement. Let us see what the Prestons are hiding. The next 6 weeks changed everything. I moved into Marcus's garage. It was not much. A folding cot, a space heater that hummed all night, a card table that became my desk. But it was warm. It was safe. And for the first time since Christmas Eve, I was not alone. Marcus treated me like the daughter he never had. He made sure I ate 3 meals a day, even when I was so focused on the research that I forgot about food. He drove me to prenatal appointments at a clinic 2 towns over, using a fake name so the Prestons could not track me. Claire Johnson, the intake nurse called, looking at the fake ID I had obtained through one of Marcus's less legitimate contacts. The doctor will see you now. At 15 weeks, the baby was healthy. Strong heartbeat, good growth. The doctor said everything looked normal. I cried in the car on the way back. Happy tears for once. This baby was the only good thing in my life, and she was going to be okay. Yes, she. The ultrasound tech let it slip, and I did not mind. I had always wanted a daughter, someone I could give all the love and stability I never had. Meanwhile, Marcus and I were digging into the Prestons' finances, and what we found was devastating. Let me tell you about forensic accounting. It is not glamorous. It is not like the movies, where someone types on a keyboard for 30 seconds and suddenly all the evidence appears on screen. Real forensic accounting is tedious work. It is following tiny threads through mountains of paperwork. It is cross-referencing obscure documents. It is building a case one piece at a time, like assembling a puzzle when half the pieces are missing and the other half are deliberately hidden. But I was good at it, and Marcus was even better. We started with what I knew. Ryan's trust fund, his stock options, the numbers I remembered from preparing the Preston family taxes. That led us to the shell companies. There were 12 of them, hidden behind layers of corporate structure like Russian nesting dolls, registered in Delaware, Wyoming, the Cayman Islands. Each one owned by another, creating a maze designed to hide the true beneficial owner. But paper trails exist. They always exist, and we found them. By the end of week 2, we had documented over $25 million in concealed assets. Ryan had disclosed 2.3 million. He was hiding more than 90% of his actual wealth. That alone was enough to void the prenup. Fraudulent disclosure. Clear as day. But Marcus wanted to keep digging. There is more here, he said one night, spreading printouts across the card table. We had been at this for 14 hours straight, fueled by coffee and determination. The personal fraud is just the surface. Look at these cash flows. He showed me patterns I had missed. Payments from Preston Financial to the shell companies. Consulting fees that did not correspond to any actual consulting. Money moving in circles. designed to obscure its origin and destination. They are cooking the books, Marcus said quietly. The company is not as profitable as they claim. These consulting fees are how they hide the losses. How bad is it? He ran the numbers 3 times before answering. His face was grim. The company is $40 million in debt. They have been hiding it for at least 8 years. If this comes out, Preston Financial collapses. The family loses everything. $40 million. Preston Financial was one of the most respected firms in Boston. Clients trusted them with billions in assets. And the whole thing was a house of cards, waiting for a strong win. But that was not the biggest discovery. In week 4, we found the payment. $200,000. Transferred from Victoria Preston's personal account to a family named Martinez in July of 2019. I almost missed it. The payment was disguised as a charitable donation, buried in a list of legitimate contributions. But the amount was too precise. Charitable donations are usually round numbers. This was $200,000 even. And the timing was strange. July 15, 2019. 3 days after something else that caught my attention, Megan Preston's sudden vacation to Europe. I started pulling police records. It took days of searching through databases that Marcus had access to through old contacts in law enforcement. July 12, 2019. Hit-and-run accident in South Boston. A 19-year-old named Diego Martinez was struck by a vehicle while crossing the street. Killed instantly. Driver fled the scene. Case went cold. The timing matched perfectly. 3 days after the accident, Victoria paid $200,000 to Diego's family, and Megan left the country for 2 months. You think it was her? Marcus said quietly, looking at the evidence spread across the table. You think Megan killed that boy? I know she did. I could feel it, the same way I could feel patterns in numbers. Victoria covered it up, paid off the family, buried the police report, made her daughter's crime disappear. Diego Martinez, 19 years old, someone's son, someone's brother. His life snuffed out by a spoiled drunk driver who never faced a single consequence. Until now, we kept digging. In week 5, Sloane's name started appearing in the financial records. Ryan had been paying for her apartment for 3 years. Not 6 months like I had assumed. 3 years. He had been cheating on me almost from the beginning. Her car, her credit cards, vacations to places I had never been, designer clothes and expensive jewelry. All of it funded through one of the shell companies tied to Preston Financial, which meant Ryan was embezzling from his own family's company to pay for his mistress. Here is the interesting part, Marcus said, showing me the paper trail. Sloane does not know. What do you mean? She thinks Ryan is wealthy. She thinks she is going to marry into money and live happily ever after. She does not know that Preston Financial is nearly bankrupt. She does not know the money he has been spending on her is stolen. Sloane was being played, just like me. Ryan was lying to both of us, juggling 2 women who both believed his promises. I filed that information away for later. Week 6 brought the discovery that changed everything. I was going through medical records. Marcus had contacts who could access things that were supposed to be private. I was looking for anything useful, any leverage, any weakness. I found Ryan's fertility specialist records from 2015. The report was clinical, detached. Patient displays azoospermia consistent with testicular trauma sustained during college athletics. Prognosis for natural conception is 0%. Recommend donor insemination if patient desires biological children. I read it 3 times. Ryan was infertile, had been infertile since college, could not father children naturally, which meant the baby I was carrying, the baby I thought was his, the baby he told me to handle, was not his at all. I kept searching, found Victoria's correspondence with a fertility clinic from 2 years ago. She had arranged artificial insemination using donor sperm from an anonymous bank. The procedure was performed during what I thought was a routine gynecological exam. I remember that appointment. The doctor said there would be some cramping, that it was normal. I had no idea what was actually happening. I had been inseminated without my knowledge or consent, and neither Ryan nor Victoria knew who the biological father was. Anonymous donor. Could be anyone. I sat back from the computer and tried to process what I had just discovered. Victoria had orchestrated everything. She knew Ryan could not have children. She needed an heir to continue the Preston legacy. So she arranged for me to be impregnated by a stranger, planning to pass the baby off as Ryan's. But then Ryan decided he wanted out of the marriage, and Victoria had to choose between her plan for an heir and her son's happiness. She chose her son. They threw me away like garbage, not knowing they were throwing away the only chance at a Preston heir they would ever have. I started laughing, then crying, then laughing again. Marcus found me like that an hour later, surrounded by printouts, half hysterical. Claire? He knelt beside me, his face creased with concern. What did you find? I handed him the medical records. His eyes went wide as he read. My God, he whispered. They do not know. None of them know the truth. I wiped my eyes. No, they do not. And when the time is right, I am going to tell them. Week 7, I was 18 weeks pregnant, and we finally had enough evidence to bury the Prestons. Asset fraud, securities violations, a manslaughter cover-up, 8 years of cookbooks, all documented, verified, and backed up to 3 separate cloud storage accounts using different passwords and different services. Every night before I went to sleep, I uploaded everything to the cloud. It became a ritual, a precaution. If something happened to my laptop, if the Prestons somehow found me and seized my files, the evidence would survive. That decision saved me later. But I am getting ahead of myself. Marcus had reached out to an attorney he trusted, Catherine Shaw, corporate litigation specialist. She had a reputation for taking down corrupt executives in a personal grudge against the Prestons. Her brother owned a small investment firm 10 years ago, Marcus explained. The Prestons engineered a hostile takeover, destroyed his business, drove him to bankruptcy. Catherine has been waiting for a chance to return the favor. We met Catherine at her office in Cambridge. It was modest compared to the glass towers downtown, but her eyes were sharp and her mind was sharper. This is comprehensive, she said, flipping through our evidence. Her voice held a note of genuine admiration. Asset fraud, securities violations, potential manslaughter cover-up. We can destroy them with this. What is our next step? I asked. Catherine leaned back in her chair. We file a motion to void the prenup based on fraudulent asset disclosure. Simultaneously, I will contact the SEC about the company books. They have been quietly investigating Preston Financial for months. Our evidence is the missing piece they need. How long? Catherine considered. By Valentine's Day, you will have your real settlement. Ryan Preston will be facing federal fraud charges, and the family that threw you out in the snow will be fighting for their survival. For the first time in 7 weeks, I allowed myself to hope. I started looking at apartments. Nothing fancy, just a small place with room for a nursery. I imagined yellow walls, a mobile with stars, a crib by the window where my daughter could watch the world wake up. Marcus took me to dinner to celebrate, a nice Italian restaurant where we sat in a corner booth and talked about the future like it was something worth planning for. I laughed that night, really laughed, for the first time in months. Then Catherine called. Claire. Her voice was tight, controlled, the voice of someone delivering bad news. We have a problem. What kind of problem? Someone leaked that you are building a case. The Prestons filed preemptively this morning. Filed what? I could hear Catherine taking a breath. They are claiming you embezzled $200,000 from Preston Financial over the past 5 years. They have fabricated records, bank statements, expense reports, your signature on wire transfers. She paused. There is a warrant for your arrest. The restaurant seemed to tilt around me. The happy Italian music became distorted. The warm lighting felt suddenly cold. A warrant? I could barely form the words. But I did not do anything, I know. Catherine's voice softened slightly. But they have evidence. Fabricated evidence, yes, but evidence that will hold up long enough to get you arrested. Once you are in the system, they will bury you. They have lawyers, judges, connections. You will spend months fighting criminal charges while your civil case falls apart. What do? You disappear. Right now. Tonight. I will keep working the case from my end, but you cannot be found. If they arrest you, they win. I looked at Marcus across the table. He had heard enough of the conversation to understand what was happening. His face was grim. Go, he said quietly. I will handle the check. Meet me at the house in an hour. I left through the back entrance of the restaurant, into an alley that smelled like garbage and old grease. Snow was falling again. It seemed like it was always snowing when my life fell apart. 3 hours later, I was in a motel room 2 towns over, paying cash, using a fake name. I was a fugitive now, wanted for crimes I did not commit, unable to go to hospitals, use credit cards, or show my face anywhere I might be recognized. 18 weeks pregnant and living in the shadows. The weeks that followed were the hardest of my life. I moved every few days. Cheap motels that did not ask questions. Truck stops with showers for $3. Food banks where I waited in line with other desperate people, trying not to make eye contact. Marcus's social security checks covered the motel rooms, but we both knew it was not sustainable. He was risking everything to help me. His savings, his reputation, his freedom, if the Prestons discovered our connection. I saw my face on the news for the first time in week 9. Former Preston financial employee wanted for embezzlement. They used my employee photo. I looked so young, so hopeful, so naive. Megan posted about it on Instagram. When karma catches up, hashtag justice served, hashtag gold digger exposed. The comments were brutal. People who did not know me, who had never met me, calling me a thief, a liar, a manipulator. Worse things I will not repeat. One night in a motel room that smelled like cigarettes and mildew, I called Marcus. Maybe I should turn myself in, I said. My voice was flat, exhausted. At least in jail I would have medical care. The baby would be monitored. Maybe they would let me. I could not finish the sentence. Listen to me, Marcus said firmly. The moment you are in their system, the Prestons bury you. They have lawyers and judges and connections we cannot match. You will take a plea deal just to survive, and your daughter will be born while you are in prison. Is that what you want? No, we are close, Claire. The SEC is ready to move. They just need one more piece. We can be that piece. Do not give up now. I am so tired, Marcus. I am so tired of fighting. I know. His voice softened. But you are the strongest person I have ever met. You survived foster care. You put yourself through school. You built a career from nothing. You can survive this too. I looked at my reflection in the grimy motel mirror. I barely recognized myself. Dark circles under my eyes. Hair unwashed for days. The emerald dress long gone, replaced by thrift store clothes that did not quite fit over my growing belly. But somewhere deep down, there was still fire. Okay, I said. Okay, I will keep going. Good, Marcus said. Now get some sleep. We have work to do tomorrow. Week 10 brought an unexpected message. I had set up an anonymous email account using a VPN and a fake name, a way for Marcus and Catherine to contact me without leaving a trace. One morning there was a new message in my inbox. Not from Marcus, not from Catherine. I know what they did to you. They are doing it to me too. We should talk. It was signed with a single letter. S. Sloan. Every instinct told me it was a trap. Sloan was Ryan's mistress. She had been sleeping with my husband for 3 years. She had stood in that ballroom in her white dress, watching me be humiliated and destroyed. Why would she want to help me? But I was desperate, and curiosity got the better of me. We arranged to meet at a public library in a town neither of us had any connection to. Middle of the day, plenty of witnesses. If it was a trap, at least there would be people around. I got there 30 minutes early, positioned myself near the exit, and waited. Sloan arrived exactly on time, and she looked terrible. Her perfect hair was unwashed and pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her designer clothes were wrinkled. Her makeup, usually flawless, was smeared. She had clearly been crying. She spotted me and walked over slowly, like she was approaching a wild animal that might bolt. I'm not here to apologize for what I did, she said, sitting down across from me. Her voice was hoarse. I know you hate me. Why are you here? She was quiet for a moment, looking down at her hands. Because Ryan lied to me too. She slid a folder across the table. I thought I was marrying into money, she said. He promised me everything. The houses, the cars, the lifestyle. He said once the divorce was finalized, we would announce our engagement. Start our perfect life together. She laughed bitterly, so I started looking into the company. Just due diligence, you know. I wanted to understand what I was getting into. And what I found, she trailed off. I opened the folder. Inside were bank statements, internal memos, documents I had never been able to access. Preston Financial is bankrupt, Sloan said. They are hiding it from everyone. Investors, employees, board members, even me. Ryan has been paying for my apartment with embezzled money. When the company collapses, I will be implicated too. I looked up from the documents. So you want me to feel sorry for you? No. Sloan met my eyes. She looked exhausted, defeated. But underneath that, I saw something else. Anger. I want to help you burn them down before they burn me. This was not friendship. This was not forgiveness. This was two women who had been used and discarded by the same man, both fighting to survive. But I recognized the value of an inside source. What can you get me? Access to Richard's private server. Sloane's voice was steadier now, more confident. Every file they do not want anyone to see. Every secret they thought they had buried. Why should I trust you? Sloane smiled, and there was something sharp in it, something new. Because I am not doing this for you. I am doing it for me, Xiangmeng. They used me just like they used you, and I am not going to let them get away with it. I studied her for a long moment. This was dangerous. If it was a trap, I was walking right into it. If Sloane was still loyal to Ryan, she would lead the Preston straight to me. But if she was telling the truth, okay, I said finally, get me those files. And Sloane, if you betray me, I will make sure you go down with them. She nodded. Fair enough. 1 week later, Sloane delivered. A USB drive passed to me in the parking lot of a grocery store. 30 seconds of contact, no words exchanged. I took it back to Marcus's garage and plugged it in. The files were explosive, everything we had suspected, and more. Richard's private correspondence, detailing the fraud in his own words. Email threads with lawyers about covering up the Martinez accident. Internal memos about the company's true financial state. And one file I was not expecting. Medical records, Ryan's medical records, and attached to them, correspondence between Victoria and a fertility clinic. It confirmed everything I had suspected. Ryan was infertile. Victoria had arranged for my insemination without my knowledge, and the donor was anonymous. But there was more, a note from Victoria to the clinic requesting specific criteria for the donor selection. High intelligence, advanced education, excellent health history, no family history of genetic disorders, athletic background preferred. She was not just selecting any donor. She was trying to engineer the perfect heir. I sat back from the computer feeling sick. They had treated me like breeding stock, like an incubator for the Preston legacy. My body, my choices, my autonomy, none of it mattered to them. I was just a vessel. And when I was no longer useful, they threw me away. That night, I made a decision. This was not just about getting my fair settlement anymore. This was not just about clearing my name. This was about destroying the people who had violated me in the most intimate way possible. This was war. Week 11, I was 22 weeks pregnant, and everything was falling into place. Marcus had contacted his friend at the SEC. They were ready to receive our evidence. The investigation into Preston Financial would go from quiet to loud overnight. Catherine was preparing legal documents to void the prenup and file a civil suit for fraud. She had also identified criminal charges that could be filed once I was no longer a fugitive. Sloane's files had given us everything we needed, the final pieces of a puzzle we had been assembling for 2 months. 2 more weeks, Catherine said during our encrypted phone call. We coordinate with the SEC, time the release perfectly, and by March, the Prestons will be fighting for their lives. I allowed myself to feel hope again. Real hope. The kind that makes you start planning for the future. Then catastrophe struck. Marcus called at 2 in the morning, his voice tight with urgency. Claire, they found where you have been staying. Someone at the motel recognized you from the news. Police are 15 minutes out. I did not think. I grabbed my laptop, my bag with the essential files, and ran. Out the back door of the motel. Through the parking lot, into the night. I was 3 blocks away when I realized what I had left behind. The USB drive. Sloane's files. It had been charging on the nightstand, and in my panic, I forgot it. I stopped running, turned back. If I was fast enough, maybe I could. Sirens, getting closer, red and blue lights appearing at the end of the street. I kept running. The police seized everything, my clothes, my notes, the USB drive. They handed it directly to Richard Preston's lawyers, claiming it was evidence of my whereabouts. Now the Prestons had everything. They knew exactly what we had found. They knew about Sloane's betrayal. They had time to prepare, to fabricate more evidence, to cover their tracks. 2 months of work, gone in 15 minutes. Week 12 was when everything crumbled. The Prestons filed additional charges against me. Theft of proprietary data, corporate espionage, industrial sabotage. The warrant for my arrest was upgraded from misdemeanor to felony. Sloane was arrested, charged as my CO conspirator. Her immunity deal, the one she had been negotiating with the SEC, evaporated when the evidence of her involvement surfaced. Catherine received a threat, not subtle. A man in a dark suit showed up at her office, handed her an envelope containing photographs of her children at their school, and left without saying a word. She did not drop the case, but she called me that night, her voice shaking. They are watching everyone, Claire. Everyone who helps you. They have resources we cannot match. Every move we make, they are 2 steps ahead. So what do we do? Silence on the line. There might be one chance, Catherine finally said. The Preston Financial Annual Shareholders Meeting is in 3 weeks. Every investor, every board member, press coverage. If we could get the truth in front of all of them at once, in a way they cannot spin or control. How? I'm a wanted fugitive. I cannot walk in the front door. I do not know yet. But it is the only window we have. I was 24 weeks pregnant, living in my car again, eating from food banks, showering at truck stops, hiding my face everywhere I went, and I had 3 weeks to figure out how to bring down an empire. Week 13, the dark night. I was parked behind a closed warehouse trying to sleep in the backseat of my car. February in New England. The temperature outside was 12 degrees. Inside the car, with the engine off to save gas, it was maybe 30. I had every piece of clothing I owned piled on top of me. It was not enough. I could not stop shivering. The baby kicked. Hard. I put my hand on my stomach. 26 weeks now. A little girl fighting to survive inside a mother who was barely surviving herself. I am sorry, I whispered to her. I am so sorry. I tried. I tried so hard. And it was not enough. I thought about the life I wanted, a home, a family, someone who loved me. After 18 years in foster care, after 7 years of marriage, was that really so much to ask? I thought about the life my daughter would have if I failed, born to a mother in prison. No father, no grandparents, no support system, just the foster care system I had fought so hard to escape. I would not do that to her. I could not. I picked up my phone. The battery was at 8%. Just enough. I could call the police right now, turn myself in, end this. At least in jail I would be warm. At least I would have 3 meals a day. At least my daughter would not be born in a freezing car behind a warehouse. I started to dial. Then a text came through from Sloane. They are releasing me tomorrow. I made a deal. Testified against you in exchange for immunity. I am sorry. It was survive or drown. I closed my eyes. Of course she did. I could not even blame her. We all do what we have to do to survive. But there was more. Before I go, check the cloud backup. You uploaded everything, remember? They do not know about the cloud. They only took the USB. The files are still there. I froze. The cloud backup. I had forgotten. Every night for 6 weeks, I had uploaded copies of everything to 3 separate cloud storage accounts. Different passwords, different services, a precaution that had become so routine, I stopped thinking about it. The Prestons seized my laptop. They seized the USB. They thought they had everything, but the evidence still existed, floating in the digital ether, waiting for me to retrieve it. I started laughing, then crying, then laughing again. I was not beaten. Not yet. Week 14, I pulled together everything I had left. Marcus purchased a burner laptop with cash. I downloaded everything from the cloud accounts. Every document, every email, every damning piece of evidence. We were back where we started. Except now, we had 3 weeks instead of 3 months. I cannot walk into the shareholders meeting, I told Marcus, but I do not need to walk in as myself. What do you mean? I thought about it for a long time. The Prestons did not see the help. They never had. To them, waiters and cleaners and caterers were invisible. Background noise. Not worth noticing. I can walk in as a caterer. I smiled grimly. They will never look twice at a pregnant woman in a server uniform. I am beneath their notice. It is dangerous, Marcus said. If they recognize you, then I get arrested. I met his eyes. But Marcus, if I do not do this, I get arrested anyway. At least this way, I go down swinging. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. What do you need from me? I need you to contact your friend and I at Preston Financial, the one who owes you a favor. I need access to the building's presentation system. What are you planning? I am planning to put the evidence on every screen in that room all at once. In front of every investor, every board member, every journalist. No spin, no lawyers. Just the truth. Marcus actually laughed. That is insane. I know. I smiled. But the Prestons are expecting me to run and hide. They are not expecting me to walk into their lion's den and tear it apart from the inside. He studied me for a long moment. The woman who had shown up on his doorstep 8 weeks ago, broken and desperate, was gone. In her place was someone harder, sharper, someone ready for war. Okay, he said, let us make a plan. 3 days before the shareholders' meeting, my body betrayed me. I was at Marcus's house going over the final details of our plan when the pain hit, sharp and sudden like a knife in my abdomen. Contractions. Marcus drove me to a hospital 2 towns over. Fake name, cash payment, no questions. You are experiencing severe Braxton Hicks contractions, the doctor said. His face was serious. Stress-induced. The baby is stable, but you need complete bed rest. Your body is at its limit. I cannot, I said. I have something important in 3 days. Ma'am, the doctor leaned forward, making sure I understood. If you push yourself, you could deliver at 28 weeks. A baby born that early would spend months in the NICU, if she survives at all. The words hung in the air. If she survives. I looked down at my belly, at the daughter I had never met but already loved more than anything. The daughter I was fighting for. I could send the evidence anonymously. Let Catherine handle the presentation. Stay safe, wow. But I knew what would happen without a face, without a victim standing in that room. The Prestons would spin it. They would call it fabricated. They would bury it in lawyers and delays and counterclaims. For this to work, I had to be there. In person. Undeniable. I discharged myself against medical advice 48 hours later. The morning of the shareholders' meeting, I put on a catering uniform that Marcus had obtained. White shirt, black pants, a bow tie that would not quite close over my 28-week belly. I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back was a stranger. Gaunt face, dark circles, hair pulled back severely. Nothing like the hopeful bride who had married Ryan Preston 7 years ago. But her eyes were alive with something I had never seen before. Purpose, are you ready? Marcus asked. No, I admitted, but I am doing it anyway. He handed me a burner phone. Catherine on speed dial. SEC contact on speed dial. Everything in place. I will be waiting, he said. Whatever happens in there, you are not alone. Remember that. I hugged him. This man who had taken in a desperate stranger and helped her fight an impossible battle. This man who had become the father I never had. Thank you, I whispered, for everything. He squeezed me tight. Now go give them hell. Preston Financial Headquarters was a glass tower in downtown Boston. 40 stories of arrogance and fraud, gleaming in the winter sun. I entered through the service entrance, past the loading dock where delivery trucks idled, through the basement corridors where the real work happened out of sight, up the freight elevator that smelled like old carpet in industrial cleaner. No one looked at me twice. The pregnant caterer was beneath their notice. The shareholders' meeting was on the 40th floor. Executive conference room, wall of windows overlooking the city, the best view money could buy. 200 people filled the space, investors in expensive suits checking their phones, board members reviewing quarterly reports. business journalists ready to document the occasion for the financial press. And in the corner, three people in plain gray suits, SEC observers, officially present for routine oversight. Ryan stood at the podium with his father. They were announcing a major expansion. New offices in New York and London, aggressive hiring plans. A bold vision for Preston Financial's future. All of it lies. The company was $40 million in debt and 6 months from bankruptcy. But no one in this room knew that. Not yet. Victoria sat in the front row wearing a Chanel suit that cost more than most people's monthly salary. Megan was in the corner, live streaming for her followers. Sloan was notably absent. I positioned myself near the back of the room, holding an empty tray. Invisible. Waiting. Ryan finished his opening remarks. He was charming and confident, speaking about the future with the conviction of a man who believed he was untouchable. Now I would like to turn things over to my father, Ryan said, to discuss our strategic vision for the next decade. Richard approached the podium, and I stepped forward. Actually, I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent room, I would like to say a few words first. 200 heads turned toward me. Ryan's face went white. Security, he said, get her out of here. I held up my hand. I would wait if I were you, Ryan. There are SEC representatives in this room. You might want to hear what I have to say before you drag a pregnant woman out in front of them. The SEC observers exchanged glances. One of them nodded slightly. I walked toward the front of the room. Slowly, every step sent pain through my abdomen. The contractions were starting again. But I kept moving. My name is Claire Mitchell, I said. Some of you know me as Ryan Preston's ex-wife. The woman he divorced at a Christmas party in front of 200 people. The woman he called a gold digger, a thief, an embarrassment. I looked directly at Ryan. His hands were gripping the podium so hard his knuckles were white. But I am also the accountant who prepared this family's taxes for 5 years. And I remember every number. Richard stepped forward. This is absurd. She is a wanted fugitive. She is mentally unstable. Am I? I pulled out the burner phone. Let me share some evidence. I pressed the button Marcus's IT contact had programmed. Every screen in the room, the presentation displays, the monitors on the walls, the tablets in people's hands, flickered and changed. Bank statements appeared. Wire transfers, internal memos. The evidence, uploaded directly to Preston Financial's own servers. The room erupted. People were shouting. Investors were grabbing their phones. Journalists were taking pictures of the screens. But I was not finished. Ryan Preston disclosed assets of $2.3 million in our divorce proceedings, I said, raising my voice above the chaos. His actual holdings totaled $27.7 million, hidden in shell companies in Delaware, Wyoming, and the Cayman Islands. The murmuring grew louder. Richard Preston has been filing fraudulent financial statements for 8 years. This company is not expanding. It is $40 million in debt. Every investor in this room has been defrauded. Richard's face had gone purple. This is slander. Fabricated evidence from a deranged woman. Is it? I smiled, then explained these specific transactions. I rattled off numbers from memory. $14.3 million transferred to Cayman Holdings LLC on March 15, 2021. $8.6 million to Delaware Trust Services on September 3, 2022. Would you like me to continue? The SEC observers were taking notes furiously, but I had more. I turned to Victoria, whose face had gone the color of old ash. Victoria, should I tell everyone about the $200,000 payment to the Martinez family in July 2019? Or would you prefer to explain why you paid hush money to the family of the boy your daughter killed? Megan's phone clattered to the floor. No, she screamed. That is a lie. Mom, tell them it is a lie. But Victoria could not speak. She was frozen. Diego Martinez, I continued, 19 years old, killed in a hit and run on July 12, 2019. The driver fled the scene. The case went cold. Amazing how that happens when someone pays for silence. The room had gone completely still. Ryan made one last desperate attempt. None of this proves anything. You forged all of it. Everyone knows you are a criminal. Ryan, I smiled. When was the last time you saw a fertility specialist? He stopped. Because I have seen your medical records. The ones your mother hid from everyone. You have been infertile since college. A sports injury. 0% chance of natural conception. The color drained from his face. Victoria arranged artificial insemination using anonymous donor sperm. Neither of us knew the truth. So congratulations. You divorced your wife and destroyed her life over a baby that was never biologically yours to begin with. The room exploded. Investors were shouting, demanding explanations. Journalists were typing furiously. Board members were calling their lawyers, and Ryan just stood there, frozen. Everything he thought he knew crumbling around him. Richard tried one final time. Everyone, please remain calm. This is clearly a coordinated attack. The elevator doors opened. 6 people in dark suits stepped out. Federal agents, moving with purpose. Richard Preston, Ryan Preston. The lead agent's voice cut through the chaos. You are under arrest for securities fraud, wire fraud, and obstruction of justice. You have the right to remain silent. They did not resist. What would be the point? In front of 200 witnesses, with evidence on every screen, resistance was futile. And as they handcuffed Ryan, I caught his eye. You threw $200 at me and told me to handle it, I said. I handled it. The aftermath was chaos. The shareholders' meeting became a crime scene. FBI agents seized computers, files, and documents. Investors demanded their money back. Journalists filed stories with headlines that would destroy the Preston name forever. I sat in a chair by the window, watching it all unfold. The contractions were coming faster now, stronger. My water broke sometime during Ryan's arrest. I barely noticed. Marcus found me 20 minutes later. Hospital, he said, taking one look at my face. Now. Grace Elizabeth Mitchell was born at 11:43 that night. 28 weeks and 4 days. 4 pounds, 3 ounces. She was so small, so fragile. Translucent skin and tiny fingers in a cry that sounded like a kitten mewing. But she was alive. She was fighting. Just like her mother. She spent 6 weeks in the NICU. I spent every moment I could at her side, watching her grow stronger, watching her become the daughter I had dreamed about through all those dark nights in my car. During those weeks, the world outside the hospital continued to turn. The SEC completed their investigation. The evidence I provided, combined with their own findings, painted a devastating picture of Preston Financial. Richard Preston was convicted on 12 counts of securities fraud, 8 counts of wire fraud, and 4 counts of obstruction of justice. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, 8 years in federal prison. No possibility of parole. Ryan Preston pleaded guilty to wire fraud and conspiracy. His lawyers argued for leniency. The judge was not impressed. 4 years in federal prison, barred from the financial industry for life. Victoria Preston was never criminally charged. There was not enough evidence to prove she knew about the company fraud. But the civil suits destroyed her. Investors, creditors, and the Martinez family all came for their pound of flesh. She divorced Richard within 3 months. Lost her charity board positions. Her social standing evaporated overnight. Last I heard, she was living in a 1-bedroom condo in a suburb she once would have considered beneath her. Megan Preston was charged with vehicular manslaughter and obstruction of justice. The evidence I found, combined with testimony from the Martinez family, was enough to reopen the case. 5 years in prison, her Instagram was deleted. Her 500,000 followers vanished like they had never existed. Diego Martinez's family finally received justice. It would not bring their son back. Nothing could. But someone was finally held accountable. The charges against me were dropped. Fabricated evidence tends to fall apart when the people who fabricated it are facing prison. The warrant was vacated. My record was expunged. I was free. 8 months after the trial, a letter arrived. Expensive paper, hand-delivered by a messenger from Henderson, Wright, and Associates. One of those old Boston law firms that had been around since the Revolution. I opened it in my new office. Mitchell Forensic Consulting, a small firm dedicated to helping women in high-asset divorces. Grace was in her bassinet by the window. 4 months old now, healthy and growing. The NICU was a distant memory. The letter was formal, legal language, but the message was clear. Dear Miss Mitchell, my client, who wishes to remain anonymous, has become aware of certain circumstances surrounding your daughter's birth. Through processes I am not at liberty to disclose, he has confirmed a biological connection. My heart stopped. He donated genetic material 20 years ago as a college student in financial hardship. He never expected to be contacted. He has no intention of disrupting your life or seeking custody. However, he has established an irrevocable educational trust for your daughter, Grace Elizabeth Mitchell. This trust will cover all educational expenses from preschool through postdoctoral studies. The current value is $4.2 million. I read that number 3 times. He asked nothing in return, no visitation, no contact, no acknowledgement. He wants you to know that he followed your case in the news. He read the transcripts. And he wants you to know that what you did, standing alone against powerful people who tried to destroy you, represents everything he admires. His message for you was this: she already has the best inheritance a child can receive, a mother who never gives up. I sat with that letter for a long time. Then I did some research. James Whitfield, tech billionaire, founder of Whitfield Technologies, net worth of $4.2 billion, self-made, started in a garage, built an empire. 20 years ago, he had been a broke college student, donating genetic material to pay rent. Now he was one of the wealthiest men in America. And somewhere in his anonymous donation records, he had discovered that his biological daughter belonged to a woman who fought her way out of nothing. He could have demanded custody. He could have complicated my life in 1,000 ways. With his money and his lawyers, he could have taken Grace from me. Instead, he set up a trust fund and asked for nothing. She already has the best inheritance, a mother who never gives up. I put the letter in my desk drawer. Someday when Grace was old enough, I would show it to her. Let her decide what kind of relationship, if any, she wanted with her biological father. But not yet. Christmas Eve, 1 year later, snow fell outside my apartment window. A small tree in the corner, decorated with ornaments Grace and I had made together. Handprints in plaster, paper snowflakes, a star on top that tilted slightly to the left. Grace was 14 months old now. Walking, talking, getting into everything. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Merry Christmas, Claire. I know I do not deserve forgiveness, but I think about what I did every day. I am sorry. Ryan. I looked at that message for a long moment. Then I deleted it. Not with anger, not with satisfaction, just completion. He was part of a closed chapter. He did not deserve space in my story anymore. There was a knock at the door. Marcus arrived first, carrying too many presents. He spoiled Grace shamelessly, and I let him, because watching him be a grandfather was one of the purest joys I had ever known. Catherine came next with wine and stories about her latest case, a woman whose husband was hiding assets in cryptocurrency. We were building new methods to track it, and Doris, still working at the diner, even though I had bought the building. She brought pie, apple, still warm. This was my family now, not blood, something better. People who had shown up when it mattered, people who had seen me at my lowest and chosen to stay. I picked up Grace and held her close. You know what, baby girl, I whispered. They thought we were nothing. They thought $200 was enough to make us disappear, but here is what they did not understand. I looked at the snow falling, just like it had that night 2 years ago, the night I signed away my marriage in tears. Some people are just too stubborn to stay broken. They ask me sometimes what the title means, not knowing she is the billionaire's what? Not his daughter, not his wife, not his heir. I am the mother of his child, a child conceived through an anonymous donation 20 years ago, a child he never expected to exist. But that is not the real answer. The real answer is this: I am the billionaire's choice. 20 years ago, James Whitfield was broke and desperate. He made a decision that changed everything, a donation that paid his rent. That donation eventually led to Grace. And out of every possible outcome, every possible mother, the universe chose me, a foster kid from nowhere, an accountant with a head for numbers, a woman who refused to stay down. James Whitfield followed my case. He read the transcripts. He watched a pregnant accountant bring down one of Boston's most powerful families using nothing but her memory and her determination. And when he discovered that his biological daughter belonged to this woman, this fighter, this survivor, he did not try to take her. He did not try to control the situation. He stepped back. He set up a trust fund. He said, she already has the best inheritance. His money did not save me. His name did not save me. His legacy did not save me. I saved myself. But knowing that somewhere out there, a man worth $4 billion looked at my story and said she is extraordinary, that felt pretty good too. James reached out one more time, 6 months after the letter, not through lawyers, a handwritten note delivered with a gift for Grace's first birthday. It said, "You are not alone anymore. If you ever need anything, I am here. Not as a father, not as a benefactor, just as someone who believes in you." I kept that note in my desk. Someday I will show it to Grace. Someday I will let her decide what relationship she wants with the man who helped give her life. But not yet. For now, we have everything we need. A home that belongs to us. A family we built ourselves. A future written on our own terms. My name is Claire Mitchell, single mother, forensic accountant, survivor. Ryan thought he was divorcing a nobody. He was right. I had nobody. No family, no money, no connections. But I had something they could not buy. Every number they tried to hide. Every lie they thought was buried. Every secret they paid to keep quiet. They did not lose to a billionaire. They lost to a pregnant accountant with nothing left to lose. And some people ask if I went too far. If destroying the Prestons was revenge or justice. Here is what I tell them. I did not destroy them. I just refused to be quiet while they destroyed themselves. Karma is real. The universe keeps score. And sometimes if you are patient enough, if you are strong enough, if you refuse to give up, no matter how dark things get, you get to watch the people who hurt you face the consequences of their choices. That is not revenge. That is accountability. And it is absolutely biblical. So if you are out there right now going through something impossible, feeling like you cannot survive another day, I want you to know something. You can. You are stronger than you think. You have weapons you do not even know about yet. And the people who underestimate you, they are making the biggest mistake of their lives. Do not let them win by giving up. Stand up. Fight back. Follow the numbers until they tell you the truth. And when you finally get your moment of justice, when you finally watch the people who hurt you face what they deserve, savor it. You earned it. If this story gave you chills, hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on all notifications because I have more stories coming. Stories about women who refuse to stay broken. Stories about karma and justice and the sweet satisfaction of watching bullies get exactly what they deserve. Comment below and tell me, did I go too far or was this exactly what the Prestons deserved? I read every single comment. I want to know what you think. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who is going through hard times. Someone who needs to remember that their darkest hour might be right before their greatest victory. And remember, some people it's just too stubborn to stay broken. I am proof of that. Grace is proof of that. And maybe you are too.